This is what drove me insane. Sentiment analysis, please. These 4 guys are like the people representing our industry on the world stage right now. Welcome to the Techie Tessie channel. My name is Tess, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the tech experts who took the stand in the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. Like many of us in the world at the moment, I've been keeping up with the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial, and towards the end of the trial were 4 tech experts, and I found their techniques and findings quite interesting. And I'm by no means an expert myself, but in this video I'm going to talk about what I think of their findings and their techniques. So stay tuned. So first of all, we're going to look at Ron Schnell, who is the social media manager for Amber Heard. So let's take a look.
All right, be seated. Your next witness?
We call Ron Schnell.
Okay. All right.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
I'm Ron Schnell.
And what is your current job title, Mr. Schnell?
I'm a director at Berkeley Research Group.
Berkeley Research Group. Take a note of that, because I'm sure I'll be researching all of these after.
And could you briefly describe your educational background since high school?
I have a master's degree in computer science.
Master's degree in computer science.
Do you have an undergraduate degree?
I do not.
And can you explain to the jury why not?
When I was a kid, there was a lot of publicity about me because I was a professor at NYU. When I was 14.
Oh, wow. So this guy was a professor when he was 14 years old, and that's why he doesn't have an undergraduate degree, but he has a master's degree. Now, this is significant because, as I said at the start, I've already watched this, but this is significant.
NYU actually offered me to go into their freshman class when I was 14, but I decided that I wanted to experience the social aspect of high school, so I turned them down. But by the time I got to college, they skipped me from undergraduate to graduate.
So when did you receive your master's degree from Syracuse University?
It wasn't until 2008, actually.
And why wasn't it until 2008?
So because of my previous background while I was at Syracuse, including I did work at MIT in the artificial intelligence lab for
So he said he worked in the artificial intelligence lab, which is also significant later on.
The 2 founders of artificial intelligence, Patrick Winston and Marvin Minsky. I was immediately lured to industry even while I was in graduate school, and eventually they offer you enough money where you have to take them up on it.
So when you were lured away from Syracuse University, what did you do?
I worked at Bell Labs on something called the Unix operating system.
This next part gets to me because this is what I hate about seeing tech in law, because so many people don't understand what we see as basic tech concepts. So much time is wasted by them explaining what all of the concepts they bring up mean.
Unix is an operating system, which is the core of the computer, what makes everything work. Microsoft Windows is an operating system. Mac OS is an operating system.
It reminds me of the Mark Zuckerberg case, Linux, where he's literally having to explain everything.
Unix was the predecessor to Linux. So I worked on the kernel of the Unix operating system at Bell Labs.
And when was that approximately? What year?
1986.
Let's skip a bit ahead. I have notes next to me of all the timestamps. Let's skip to about here.
April 2020 is related to the alleged defamatory statements by Mr. Waldman.
And you talked about APIs. What does that mean?
More
API stands for
explanations.
Application Programming Interface. That is a service that's provided by companies like Twitter so that professionals can write programs to query
Let me
Twitter
know in the comments if
to
you've
ask
ever
for
used a
various
Twitter
things. In this
API.
case, I use two of their APIs. One of them is called the Search API, and that allows you to give search terms, and it will return all the tweets containing those search terms through a certain date range. The other one is called Accounts API, and I use that, again, through a certain date range to return any tweet that contained that hashtag. And I should add that it may not be obvious why you need to do this, but if you just do a search on Twitter itself, it's not going to return everything. It's going to return a subset of what is out there.
Which is true.
But using these APIs, which you pay a lot of money for, they sort of guarantee that you'll almost guarantee that you'll get everything.
I'm glad he said almost guarantee,
You mentioned
because
hashtags.
I don't
know
think
a lot
that
of
guarantees
people
that
know
everything
those
comes
are,
up as well.
For those who don't know, what's a hashtag?
Well, hashtags are a function of
Explanation
Twitter.
of
They're really just part of
hashtags
the
is
text of a
unnecessary.
tweet,
Everyone knows, even if
or
you're not
profile,
in tech,
and
you know what a
it's
hashtag is
convenient
by
to
now.
put things in hashtags so that when somebody searches, they can search for a particular hashtag and it'll come up.
And did you choose particular hashtags to search for?
I did.
And how did you choose which hashtags to
This
use?
is important.
Well, initially I was looking at tweets that would be negative towards Ms. Heard.
Tweets that would be negative towards Miss Heard. Now, as I said, I've watched this entire trial before. He doesn't go into detail as to how he decides tweets that are negative. He said he was in AI, right? I specifically pointed that out earlier because it was significant. He could have ran something called sentiment analysis, which is a machine learning model to determine if a statement is of positive or negative sentiment. He didn't do anything anywhere near as complex as that. He literally just ran a few queries through the Twitter API. So for him to be called a social media expert and just to be running a few search queries, no. Literally anybody of any sort of technical ability can do that.
So I looked through.
And let me show you what I mean by he didn't do anything anywhere near as complex as that. Let me skip ahead to this glorious Excel spreadsheet, which looks like it's just been converted into PDF format.
Corresponding hashtag during that month.
Okay. And if we look at the first one in yellow,
So as you see, he's got these hashtags at the top and they're color-coded. And if I remember correctly, these were color-coded as to whether they were negative or not. But as he's just going off his own judgment, he hasn't actually done any scientific protocol to determine if they're positive or negative, which, considering he's a social media expert, seems a bit odd to me. Because if he had said, oh, I ran this through a state-of-the-art sentiment analysis model, I'd be like, okay, wow, that's impressive. I trust you. Whereas seeing this massive Excel spreadsheet, it loses credibility to me. And so it's things like this where it makes me think, I always talk about how the basics are the most important. And so the fact that he skipped doing any sort of undergraduate degree, hopped straight into a master's degree, makes me wonder if that's the reason why this is happening. Something to keep in mind. So from all of this massive, difficult to read Excel spreadsheet, he comes up with, if it will load,
Looks to me that also, there are none prior to spike in February.
he comes up with this graph. And the thing that I find hilarious, to be honest, about this graph is the fact that on this axis he has number of tweets, but instead of the word number, he's used the hash symbol, whereas his title is, hashtag. So I don't know if that's intentional or just trying to be funny, but this actual hash symbol, of course, can be used to represent a number, but in this context, we're talking about this symbol in terms of a hashtag, so it's a bit of a conflict, which doesn't look very professional to me. So, first expert, I'm not entirely impressed with, to be perfectly honest. Next, we're going to look at Doug Bania, who's an intellectual property expert for Depp.
Please be seated. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bania. Good afternoon. Mr. Bania, you understand that this case is about the op-ed in December of 2018, correct?
I understand this case to be about the allegations of domestic abuse, both as it
I love
relates
that Johnny
to
always has sweets on his
the
desk.
2016 and the republication of that, the 2018 Washington Post op-ed.
You understand that Mr. Depp is only suing Amber about the op-ed from December 2018, correct?
My understanding is, I can base my understanding on my analysis, which includes the 2016 allegations of
That's your
abuse.
analysis, but do you understand what Mr.
Let's move
Depp
on a bit
is
to
suing
the actual
Amber for in this case?
findings and such.
Yes, the date of the deposition.
So that was a month and a half ago, correct? Okay. And you're not offering an opinion as to whether the op-ed from Ms. Heard made Mr. Depp more hireable or less hireable, correct?
Correct.
As to the articles that came up in the Google searches that you spoke about,
Google searches.
it was you made the determination whether the articles had a, quote, negative connotation or not.
Negative connotation or not. Here we are with this sentiment analysis again. Why are none of these people conducting sentiment analysis but giving an opinion as to whether a statement's negative or not? Why?
Right?
Correct.
You're a tech expert. Why?
And so that's just your view if an article had a negative connotation about Mr. Depp, right?
See, the lawyer has a point there. That's just your view. Like, what do you actually have to back it up?
Yes, that's my opinion that they had a negative connotation.
Yeah, so it's his personal opinion. There's no actual data behind it, which as a tech expert is crazy to me. Sentiment analysis, please. Please.
Right. So if an article criticizes Mr. Depp's acting, for example, you're not considering that article as having a negative connotation about Mr. Depp, correct?
Repeat that, please.
So if an article criticizes Mr. Depp's acting, you're not considering that article as having a negative connotation about Mr. Depp, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Sigh.
Now, in your analysis of Google spikes,
Google spikes. They correct this later to say Google Trends, but Google spikes, come on.
the highest spike in searches for Mr. Depp was in January 2004, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I guess you guys have it. Can you put up the demonstrative 1236? And can you see that, Mr.
Yes.
Can we make it just a little bit bigger?
I wonder if she's doing the sort of technical stuff. Like putting up all of the slides.
Okay. So
Another horrible graph. See, this is what I'm saying. Did no one teach these tech guys how to make a simple graph? Like, look at this axis on the bottom. I think this is of dates. But, good lord. Could this not have been done any better? This is so difficult to read. But yeah, they've corrected saying Google Spikes to Google Trends here, at least. At least.
if I'm understanding you correctly, A is where the most searches were conducted for Johnny Depp, correct?
Correct.
And that's from January 2004, correct?
Correct.
So that was 18.
So what I'm getting so far is all of these tech experts are simply just doing searches, whether it's through the Twitter API or Google Trends. Why is there no more complex analysis done? Like, they're just taking some data and putting it on a horrible graph. And that's good enough to hold up in a court? Like, that saddens me. It saddens me. So now we're going to listen to Bryan Neumeister, who is the metadata expert for Depp. And this is actually the testimony that made me want to watch this video. Made me want to make this video. And you'll soon see why.
The plaintiff's 1305 and use this demonstrative. You can publish the jury.
So first we're just going to see a video
Go ahead and play the demonstrative that you prepared,
explaining
and,
why he's testifying, what he's going to testify about. And it's a nice change from the past two that we've just spoken about. So as you can see, he's talking about the changes that have been made in this photo. So he's here to talk about sort of credibility of photos. So let me move on to some interesting testimony.
Your Honor, we just ruled on this.
For my question, Your Honor, to avoid the issue that you're concerned about, Mr. Neumeister, what's your opinion about the authenticity here?
There's no way for any forensic expert to validate any of these photos.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
So after all of that, he basically just said, okay, there's no way to tell, but that's not what I'm interested in here.
Your only degree is in political science, correct?
42 years ago, correct.
So once again, we have another tech expert with no tech undergraduate degree, which I find fascinating.
And you have no degree whatsoever from any academic institution in computer science, correct?
That's correct.
Wow.
And you have no certifications in computer forensics, correct?
That's correct.
Wow. I'm not discrediting anyone who doesn't have any sort of academic qualifications, but to bring in an expert into court, into law, and not have them have any certifications just seems very odd to me.
From the opinions you've testified today, you relied on no data except for the embedded EXIF metadata.
This is what drove me insane. The lawyer used the term EXIF metadata, which isn't a thing. It's not a thing. And throughout this entire trial, the terms EXIF data and metadata were sort of used squashed together like that, which is incorrect, and used interchangeably, which is also incorrect. So I need to set the record straight. First of all, I'll explain what metadata is. Metadata is data about data. And in this case, the data is a photograph. And the data about that photograph is things such as when the photo was taken, what device it was taken on, what software was used to take the picture. That's what metadata is. Whereas EXIF stands for Exchangeable Image File Format. EXIF is a file. And the EXIF file stores the metadata. So EXIF metadata isn't an actual thing. You have an EXIF file which stores the metadata. I really had to clear that up because this is the whole reason I wanted to make this video, because that alone struck me.
To support those opinions, correct?
Incorrect.
What other data did you rely on for the opinions you've testified to today?
I was trying to explain that you kept it.
What other data did you rely on for the actual opinions you've been able to testify to today besides EXIF metadata?
The type of...
So yeah, he keeps saying EXIF metadata and no, but at least he said no, incorrect. I don't know if that was in terms of like him actually saying EXIF metadata or if it was actually due to do with his process, but I was not going to let that slide. So last but surprisingly not least, we're going to listen to Julian Ackert, who is the data forensic expert for Heard.
Typically with a forensic image, you're also going to get log files. Log files are files that help you validate the forensic image and verify that it was a forensically sound data collection.
And how do log files enable you to do that?
So he starts talking about log files. Log files are similar to EXIF files, but not quite the same thing. Like I said, an EXIF file stores data more like attributes, such as like date, time, device, etc. Whereas log files store more event type data, like files being opened, files being edited, files being closed, that sort of thing.
Log files list information within the files. Sometimes they're even embedded within the images themselves, but they provide verification information that allows you to authenticate the image and the data on the image.
What is the purpose of creating a forensic image of devices or data?
In order to extract and analyze data forensically for the courts, you need to create a forensic image of the data first and gather the data from the forensic image.
And what, if any, specific types of data are collected in that image and extraction?
It's going to be any type of data that comes from the image, whether you're extracting photographs or documents or spreadsheets or anything of that nature.
Do you recall Mr. Neumeister mentioning the term hashing yesterday?
Mr. Neumeister, who we listened to before.
I do.
What is that?
Hashing is essentially a digital fingerprint of a phone.
And that is a very good explanation, actually. A digital fingerprint. That's sort of like the key statement that you're told to memorize when you learn about hashing.
File. It's an evaluation of the binary ones and zeros, or how the file is.
I do get a little bit cringy sometimes, though, when they revert to talking about binary. Sometimes it's necessary, but I don't think it is in this case.
Stored on a hard drive, and it examines the ones and zeros in a manner that gives every file a digital fingerprint, essentially, and identifies the uniqueness of the file.
The uniqueness of the file, that's correct.
And what, if any, applicability does hashing have to the visual appearance of data?
Hashing has nothing to do with the visual appearance. For example, if I had a Word document.
Which is why I'm surprised they're bringing it up. They said it was in Mr. Neumeister's testimony, which we didn't get quite that far because otherwise this would be an extremely long video. But yeah, hashing has nothing to do with the actual visual appearance because it has to do with, again, metadata. So I don't know why this got brought up, actually.
That I printed and then saved, therefore I haven't visually changed.
Printed and saved, again, those are the event-like attributes that are stored in the log files he mentioned before.
The Word document, the metadata of that Word document indicating that I printed it would be different, and therefore that Word document would not hash to the version that I used before printing.
So surprisingly, out of all of the tech experts, I feel like this person sort of is explaining things the best and is actually using relevant techniques like looking at log files and not just scraping data from, you know what I mean? Like, of course, I suppose looking at log files and stuff is technically scraping data from the folder you're looking at, whatever, but it's actually using forensic techniques, which are up to industry standard, instead of just a Twitter search or a Google search. So that's very, very interesting to me. Another key point that this case sort of brought to light for me was diversity in tech, because these four guys are like the people representing our industry on the world stage right now. This was like a televised trial involving two celebrities, and these are the people we have representing our industry. Again, it's four middle-aged white men, which comes of no surprise to me, but it's just sad to see, especially since we have them talking about things like hashtags. And it would have been nice to maybe have seen a younger person talk about that sort of stuff, and maybe as well it would have seemed more relevant to the jury. I don't know, because who seems more credible to you to talk about things like Twitter? Twitter was such a huge part of this trial, and it's like, of course it's like prejudice, but I don't see any of these people as Twitter experts to me. I would, like, if I think of Twitter expert, I instantly picture a younger person. I shouldn't think that way, but the point is, the fact if you're going to have four tech experts, two of which were for Depp, two of which were for Heard, it's surprising to see none of them are women, none of them are younger, none of them are people of colour. So it's just a shame that, like, this is sort of the confined box that our industry is sort of being represented as right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't heard yet, Techie Tessie are hosting a coding competition. Details are in the description below.